I hold on to the sounds, the smells, the power of the sea. It is all that protects my sanity. It is all I have left now, all that allows me to put on a brave face for them, down here in the dark, in the very bowels of this black ship, in the very pits of perdition. My family are with me, but this is no comfort. It is a heart-wrenching agony that they experience this too. If only I could take on this hardship alone, save them from it, I would go gladly. But no, my son, my daughter, my wife, they are with me, down here in the dark. The sea, the great expanse, mighty yet gentle, life-taking, but also life-giving. For 100 generations our family had been wind whisperers. We had aided the village, we had led them at times. At others, we had only been what we are, wind whisperers. The few who can fill the sails on a calm day, the few who can slow the onrushing storm. Never stop it, but we can slow it. We were hailed, but never fawned to. Venerated, but never elevated. We had a place, but it was no more important than anyone else's. But then the Imperium came to our world. For a decade our village was left alone. We hardly knew of the changing lords, as the tithes were the same. Fish, always fish. But we managed. When we were out one day, my father was present. From the deck of his ship he pointed up to the cliffs, to a lone man standing there in the armor of the Star Warriors, but with an odd and ill-omened countenance. My father whispered on the wind to me, to us all, he said, "Be wise. Do not fill the sails now. Do not still the airs. Not while this one watches. I sense a dark cloud in his wake." We did as instructed and came to dock quietly, yet without using our skills. But it did not matter. Later that night, my father, as the head of our kind in the village, as he put it, they took him from his home, and they dragged me and the children, my wife, out to watch. The man in armor bore a sigil and started to scream in a voice under the heavens. He proclaimed us anathema. He proclaimed us open to the infestations of evil. He called us the snakes in the grass, the sharks in the seas. With that he set light to the pyre my father was atop, tied to a stake. I was held by henchmen he had in his retinue, large and ugly men, as were my family. Against these killers, no one from our village could stand. I understood their position. My wife does not. She calls them cowards. Traitors to allow us to be treated so. She is just scared. We all are. We were not burnt that night, but we were herded up, put into caged wagons as he toured the coastal villages, his entourage increasing commensurate to his catch. Soon there were 70 of us, wind whisperers, healers, tellers of the future, net weavers. All who had been touched by the Fae were taken. We were treated like prisoners then, but at least we were treated like semi-humans. We were fed at least. Bowls, hot food, chance to relieve ourselves in pairs under guard. When the coast was done, we were taken inland and met by other caravans of such cages from all of the points of our small country. They had taken us all that they could find. It was not long before we came to one of their large spaceports, they called it. Metal, vast miles of metal. Things going up towards the sun and coming down out of the skies. Huge things, like ships of the air but without sails. One night a wailing went up from the camps around us, spilled into ours. At first I did not understand why, as every throat was torn with a horrifying blood-curdling lament. Then I saw it. Then I understood, as I joined them. A huge vessel, but still only a transport to a larger one above the clouds, but all in black. It seemed to be made of solid midnight. Light did not reflect from its lines, they were absorbed by them. But that is not why people wailed. As it descended, I felt a sense of foreboding so intense it was akin to the feeling one would have to seeing the end of the world, your loved ones, your home, your country, your planet, tortured to death. It was worse as it got closer, as the feeling was matched to another hole appearing in our souls. We could feel all our tethers to the world, our birthright, our life force, severed. The ship somehow cut our connection to the universe, a connection all of the whisperers, healers, and tellers all feel. It was gone. Many wept, many shook, as we all could not hold up the exertion of the screaming, and as one we ceased. But the moaning and sobbing was deafening still. Over the next hours, one camp after another was shackled in chains to the vessel. Some tried to resist. They were instantly shot. Darts of sunlight came from the metal weapons of the guards, burning straight through any who showed any sign of defiance. So we trudged on board. There we were taken down into the very depths of the ship, and led out into a huge holding room. No privacy, just one huge room. On each side there were sheer sides, going up to walkways above. We were escorted there and subsequently monitored and policed by women in armor. But they were things of terror to us, crows in the dark. For their presence pained many, made all shudder at their passing. They were like wells that eat all that is thrown into them. There was nothing there. They were soulless, and the malice they exuded, the hatred. We learnt to fear them. Food was dropped on us from above, by chutes and pulleys into troughs like animals. But despite the severing of our connection to the universe, some still had dreams so potent that they intruded on others. Each day and night were the same, just eternal darkness. Then lights and food funnels, then back to the constant dark until one of the horrors walked above us and shone a light down. Madness was rife, spreading like a cancer amongst us in the dark. Screamers were dealt with. I had to do the deed myself once. He was gone. Nothing of him remained but a mouth and lungs and pain. So I ended it for him. My son and I did it as swiftly as we could. But it happened elsewhere in this large room, this dank hell. We were joined by others, and the dead were removed once in a while, as this black ship moved from world to world collecting those touched by the Fae. Kept my family about me. I watched them in the dark. We hugged, and quietly whispered songs or played memory games. At least, they were mainly grown. My son was almost a man and my daughter almost a woman. We would have found matches for them both. But finally our road ended. We were herded again to the higher decks and then out into the glaring dazzle of a planet of unnatural sizes and materials, oddly twisted and foreboding. Along one huge walkway they marched us, and as we joined the ranks from over a dozen of these transport vessels, I saw the multitudes that preceded us. There were more people on this walkway, more Fae touched than there must have been in all of Tunusht, my home country. Perhaps even all of my home world. Endless, bedraggled, starved and scared, manacled humans, all lurching in the same direction on endless chains as wide as your arm. Old chains. Chains with caked-in blood rust on them. But for a few moments we got to see the splendor of the world, the ships in the air, the golden and silvered monuments, the grandeur of the world at the center of the Imperium. I was terrified. But I had to look cheerful for my family. I drew in a deep breath as we walked and tried to tell mild jokes, but it was in vain. For less than 10 minutes later, our chains led us down into the cavernous depths of another place. Again, All the time, the female guards never saying a word, or was as cold as the grave. They flanked us and forced us on. Down we went, to tunneled areas, lit, but dimly lit. Again, we were broken into holding areas. At least the metal of the pens was dry, unlike the ship. We slept as best we could on the ground. The next day, if it was then, we were awoken, all coupled up to more chains and led through a tunnel to a long room. On either side were people who were inspecting us in seconds, then filling in a sheet of some form. We passed one after another. Sometimes they just stared at us for a moment before giving a curt nod to move along. When we got to the end of the process, we were ordered to stand in lines at a room to the left. We did so, of course, all still attached by chains as we were. We waited for hours. We waited in silence, forever under the eye of the silent armoured women, the ones with no smiles, no presence, no joy in their soul-dead sentries, whose mere presence, I believe, silenced our ears to the pulse of the galaxy. Man in priestly garb entered the room with 2 boys with him. One held his mitre, and the second held a bookstand placed on his back. He stood before the priest, as he deposited a large book on the boy and flicked through it peevishly, with a grimace on his face. Finally he looked at us and began. "We have threshed your flesh, sifted your minds and sorted your cells. For all can serve, but the vessel must be worthy of the task to which it is allotted." As he spoke, the women finally moved as one, and began to unchain certain people and take them away, attaching them to another chain across the room, then returning for more. The priest was a distraction. The only loud voice we had heard was not screaming in months. We stood gaping at him, and were generally unaware of what was happening until it was too late. As the soulless came from my son and daughter, the priest saw my face and locked eyes with me, taking my attention to himself. "The ones now chosen go on to a brighter future, for they are strong and fit and stable, and can be used for many tasks, can serve in many ways when they have been forged anew by the Emperor. Blessed be his name. For them the struggle goes on, but for you the struggle is over. You have passed the test, and will go on. You will be taken back into the light, to serve the most holy God Emperor and all of humanity in the finest way, to become the light itself." My son and daughter were now attached to the other chain. It was being led off. I could do nothing now, if I ever could at all. We looked at each other and I nodded and smiled, as if to say all would be well. My wife and I held hands as we waved them goodbye. Then the chain moved again, and we were drawn away. Down again we went. Down further, and the light dimmed and dimmed again, until it was pitch, and all light came from a large door at the end of this huge corridor. We trudged while being hauled along by the chain again. But to my shock, when the line came closer to the light, the ones in front started to pull back, started to try to stop the chain and to prevent themselves going through the doors. Soon the same sobbing of "No, no, not there," came from many in front of me. My wife grasped for my hand and I clutched it. We were all pulled into the light no matter what. I had no idea, till we came close enough, until we saw what was inside, until we felt the room. It was well lit, more's the pity. It was black marble of some form, but had the effect of the same material as the ship. It absorbed the light. It ate it instead of reflecting it. There were thousands of markings on the walls, all complicated, all separate. No 2 inches were left uncovered. The glyphs, they were silver and reflected the light from the orbs in the air above us, so it gave the room a look of eternity, like standing in the void amongst brilliant stars, but to a backdrop of endless night. Our chain was drawn through rings on top of black marble blocks that stood at regular intervals in a concentric swirl toward the center point of the room. We would be drawn through, and each one of us would eventually stand before one of these black blocks, but there were thousands. So I noticed that there were other doors open, and more spokes leading to the center of the room. There must be blocks for 10,000 souls or more. All Fey-touched souls. But that is not what was terrifying, intimidating as it was. It was the feel. The lines in the marble below. It had trenches in where others, so many others, had trodden this path, that it had eroded the very rock. The nearer the center of the room, the deeper the grooves forged by unshod human feet alone. The age of the room, the darkness. There was nothing here but death, something cold, and it was as if the blocks themselves wept. The lines in their marble all seemed to run downward somehow. It was like visiting a graveyard, but one that contained all of the joy of humanity. Holding hands, we steeled ourselves. I tried to turn and smile at her. Our eyes locked, and we said goodbye. We both knew. As predicted, there was a place for each of us at these obelisks, these plinths. As the last chain reached the center of the room, all of the chains went taut, and our manacles were somehow drawn to either side of the blocks by invisible power. All of us. It must have been 10,000 if it were one. At that, the doors leading into the room all closed and were bolted from the other side. None of the women were on this side of the doors. Only us Fey-touched. A breeze began to lift, as our blocks very slowly began to shrink into the ground. As they did, they pulled us into a position of being on our knees. Worse, with every inch it went down, the veins in the marble began to shine, matching the glyphs on the walls. Soon they burned so bright we were dazzled and all illuminated. The wind now picked up to buffet us and whip our ragged clothes around about our rig-thin forms. The sound of people wailing picked up to match the winds, as worms of power seemed to crackle now from our manacles and into us all. And then it began in earnest. The blocks lit one after another from the center of the room, and as they did, the person to which they were connected ended. They would lurch upwards, as if someone had a hook in the back of their mouth. They would arch their backs and whip their heads open, as one after another had a long string of wisps of light pulled from them. When it had ended, they slumped to the ground, smoking out of their eyes and mouth. Their hair was grey, their skins like corpses. Their muscles melted. Their very souls were being pulled out of their mouths and eyes, into a huge cyclone of light at the center of the room. I watched my plinth light. I felt the light call to me, felt it drag on me. Agony. As the light of all of the psychers in the room then coalesced into one form in the center and lifted upwards towards the ceiling, as a single arcane orb opened in the roof of the room. The power was drawn upwards and it shot along a tight beam, up into the center of a structure made by no human hand, a structure older than the Imperium itself. And thus did the structure, the Golden Throne, convert the souls of these 10,000 people into sustaining power for the master of mankind, the most holy God Emperor. For it is known that the souls of 10,000 psychers are sacrificed to the Emperor every day. For he is the light of the Astronomicon. He is the savior and protector of mankind. And no sacrifice in his name is too much. For without him, the human race is doomed. Holy Terror. Earth. The cradle of humanity. Circa 8000 BC. Once it was almost unheard of for there to be a moot. Time had changed. This was now the third one in so many generations. My father had made the journey the last one, and I, my previous incarnation, the one before, the Great Moot. The call went out again from the eldest, and so it must be met if enough agreed to it. The movement of clouds to call to those who read the skies, a dream for those who did not, a message from a flame for some, a flight of birds for others. All were called, and this time there was only one calling required, for enough agreed to it, and agreed to it quickly. The times had changed. We could all tell. We all now knew. It was irrefutable. All shamans knew, and something had to be done. So we came. From every tribe, every land, every island, every mountain, every plain, we came. Some who were far across the waters of Mother Earth would join us in the dreaming, but all would come. Many moons had I travelled, we all had, years in the making for moments alone of discourse. We collected others on the way, the route known. Sometimes we waited for days and nights, but none came. We knew it was not because they would not, it was because they could not. They were gone. So we moved forever onwards, a pilgrimage of the few, but seemed to be many. For when we all met, it was a sea of tents, like a small city, with many campfires, many styles, many colours and hues, not only of robes and garments, trinkets and gems, but of skin and hair and eyes. All of the tribes of humanity were here represented, a conclave of the shaman, of each and every tribe of man. The day was for resting after the exertions of the road, to swim, to eat, to smoke, to drink, but also to laugh and scowl, shake fists and reminisce, or catch up with each other as the souls of the few blessed ones met once more. Like a carnival, its dazzling splendor lightened the mood and overawed the senses. But soon night approached, and the gathering began to become more measured, more restrained, more introspective, solemn. Time would be of the essence, and brevity and clarity of expression required, if all were to feel that they had been heard, should they wish to speak. I thought many would wish to speak this time. So we pondered, weighing our words in preparation, but none would repeat what had been said by another. All had the respect to treat the statement from any as equal to all. It was not a contest, it was a meeting of minds. But I feared this time it would be a meeting of factions, as it had been before. The best speakers of their ideologies will be deployed first. Perhaps. That is what happened at the one before the last, when I lived a previous life. But I soon found out that this time would be different. It would end being the last moot of all. In the light of day, in that city of tents and colours and noise, it had been hard to see what had happened. If you did not see someone, you expected that they were somewhere else in the mass. But we could ignore it no longer. As I looked around the bowl, there was a third less than the last time I had attended. I was shocked to the core. I had hoped that many would be attending via the dreaming, but when the tally of those who had come via the astral was made, our eyes were accustomed to seeing this plane, the Sea of Souls. We realized the horror. A full third of us were gone, in only 2 generations, in only 2 reincarnations. A hush fell over the gathering as the shocking truth was so starkly and abundantly clear to all. The silence was broken by the second, a tall man of a local tribe. He was the second eldest, and thus the host. "We have been called here by the eldest of us all, the elder, as we have been twice before. But now perhaps we should heed that which before we may have taken lightly." He turned and bowed, and there he was, still the eldest. He had been so for the last 3 meetings. Eldest of the first I attended, where he voiced his concerns. He had kept holding on to this life, inhabiting a rotting corpse that was all bone and no sinew. How it must have bruised and diminished his soul to continue it this way. Yet he had, as he slowly rose from sitting, leaning on his stick all the way through, swaying more to keep balance than to gain attention. The combination was still hypnotic.
Twice before have I said this, but it is now the last time, for we have no more of it, no more time.
Many, many moons ago now, I had a dream of prophecy. I saw the present as it is, and the future as it could be, and I was afeard. For dark things have awoken in the river of souls, the other planes, a malevolence, a malice, and a murderous hate. In smaller parts they presently skulk across the veil, taking a soul here, a soul there, in dreams or dream walking, but this is only the beginning. For one day soon they will slowly coalesce. Like tiny bugs of light they will combine to become great stars of searing might. These denizens, these forces, were not created by us. Their seed was planted eons ago across the greater sea of souls. But somehow it is humanity, our tribes, all of our people, that give them most sustenance. Our prides and fears and hates and loves and wars draw their eye and engorge their bellies. And forever will they hunt our people, until they have defeated all of its guardians, and enslaved all of the tribes to be their thralls and playthings for all time. And alone, none of us can stop it. We must join. We must be one purpose. Thus was my dream, my prophecy. Now, heed me finally, and act. The second stood again. A second I will speak. None can deny this prophecy comes true. Too many times has one of we shaman been brought to battle with a being of the shadows and slain, whereas before they would have fled at our advent. The size of our gathering speaks all the testimony required to be compelling. None can deny the dark things that now haunt the paths of dreams and spirit walkers. Who can doubt that there is an effort to destroy us by whatever force is yet to truly become? We must heed the eldest and act. A young man, but only of this current form, for his tattoos of blue showed the ages and wisdom of the soul within, stood. It had been this shaman who had previously demanded restraint and rebutted the prophecy to the verge of rudeness. He now somberly bowed to the eldest and spoke, twisting to see all one by one as he did so. I am proven wrong, and freely cede to the wisdom of the eldest and recant my previous words. The threat is real, but he never says how it meet it, Elder. It was my dream to present to the conclave. It is not for me to decide what to do with this wisdom. Aye, but we are shaman, and many of us walk the pathways and view the seas to divine what is and what may be. Despite the magnitude of the danger, I have never heard of a dream of prophecy that did not also include a solution, a hint, at least, on a way to adjust the now, to alter the future. What is the rest of it, Elder? What are you not telling us? Wanting us to come to all on our own? Is it that terrible? No matter what it is, now is the time to talk, to guide, for I think I speak for all when I say there is none now who doubt you. Are you to call a walking, or to march as one into the tides and hunt down these things? I nodded, seeing that all others, without exception, nodded in agreement also. All eyes went to the eldest. His eyes closed and he sighed. He looked into the fire at the center for a time before he responded. We must do more than this. If we go into the dream and hunt them, they will hide, and our bodies will pass one by one due to exhaustion. When there are few of us left, they will pounce. We will be doing their work for them. Nor can it work, for there is no heart, no tower of these beings, no place that they call strong, for they do not exist yet. we would be hunting down minor beings who would then merge with each other faster, potentially making matters worse. Many joined me in looking downhearted, but the eldest spoke on. There was a way. In a myriad lines that I witnessed, there was but one. We must merge. We must not just act as one. We must be one. The things that are incubating now will be mighty enough to be dubbed gods. Without a being of equal power, of equal might, then they will surely kill us shepherds and enslave our flocks. We must become one. How? Eldest, tell us how! The eldest just looked at me. Many eyes were drawn to me also. I knew these souls, so they knew it would take a minute or two, but realization dawned on me. I stood. There is a rare ritual we know in our tribe. It has only been performed a handful of times before in all of the time of our people, in all the time since the rise of the Blessed Ones, the shaman. I will explain. When two souls are entwined and travel the river of reincarnation together, sometimes they lose synchronicity, meaning they can be born and die generations apart. Sometimes they will harmonize their reincarnations for one life, but do not wish to chance this being separated again. In these rare circumstances, there is a ritual that has been used to merge the souls. But there is only one occurrence of it being used on more than two souls, and that was only 3. The principle, I suppose, is the same. It requires the souls to go into the ocean together, so most often those who undergo the ritual then take herbs that end their present incarnations at the same time. From there they merge beyond the veil. And yes, this is no folk tale. It is rare, but I know of 2 such beings presently incarnated. So we all die at the same time. Forgive me for asking a question only, but would this not then lead to a feeding frenzy? With all of our souls as one going into the other world, would it not just speed up matters and summon these horrors more quickly, as they devoured our souls? The elder interjected.
Perhaps. That is a fear. But as our friend here knows, the merged souls are often greater, more potent than the sum of their parts. If only half the number here were to merge, were to make it through, then the being they could create.
Again, he looks to me. I continue. A being, a result of the merger of the strongest souls of our race, would be like nothing witnessed before. When it did incarnate, its strength would be many times that of a normal man, its thoughts like quicksilver, its memory eternal. It would not be touched by the hand of illness, nor the grasp of death. Immortal, it would walk the lands for all of the ages of our tribes, and its mystic might would be the combination of every one of our individual talents and strengths, but augmented by factors. We are talking about making a god? No. An eternal guardian, a warrior of light to show the way, to lead and protect. A father for all tribes, as one. A new man, an immortal champion of humanity that would have the power to fight the denizens of the darkest corners of the Sea of Souls, no matter how mighty they became. That would be the last time I would speak at a moot. For it was the last moot. A long, long time ago. For Sergeant Fortuno, the last 10 minutes had been a blur, a terrible blur. He had been ordered to go into the old quarter to track down one man. His eyes widened to almost bursting when he was instructed to take his own and 2 more units with him to be sure. 30 Astartes, 3 full squads, just to take down one man. What was he, a Primarch? In the next half day he learnt the hard way. They had been tracking him in the streets, closing the net, when matters suddenly turned on them as they strung themselves out to make sure he could not escape. The net was wide. Tiberius' squad was strung out thus when it came. One after another of them in quick succession was ended, the life signs going flat in mere instances. Fortuna ordered the men to close ranks and almost bunker. What in the name of the Emperor and all his sons could do this to Astartes? Gracchus' squad was there 1 minute, gone the next. He heard them shouting, as something large had just appeared amongst them and was killing fast. The one sentence he made out was confusing. "It's in power armor." Finally, it came to their turn. But it did not speak, or pounce on them. It just walked towards them, as bold as brass, as clear as day. A massive man, but definitely a human, but too big to be even an Astartes. It was wearing an archaic set of power armor, the likes he had never seen before. But for all its simplicity, it protected the monster within as he charged at them. It took many shots, but few penetrated its armor. When he hit the squad, he went through them like a hot knife through butter. It crushed them and killed them, all until it got to him. Armor damaged in places, blood soaked. It was slower now. As it reached toward the sergeant, his power sword leapt up and cut off both the extended hands. The Astartes then, without a nanosecond of hesitation, stepped in and impaled the huge being with his power sword. It plunged dead center, between where an Astartes' 2 hearts are, but most definitely it severed its spinal cord. A stroke that would kill a Marine instantly. Yet still this being lived. As it slowly toppled backwards against the wall, it slid down, leaving a large red patch across the wall. The sun lit its face in a golden halo as he closed his eyes, basking for a moment. He was dying. His eyes opened. A trickle of blood came out of his mouth before he started to quietly speak. How could he? We marched for him. We fought for him. We bled for him. We died for him. Everything he has today, everything he has achieved, everything he owns was bought with our toil, our suffering. He was our leader, our general, our king. We trusted him. We would have worshipped him if he would have allowed it. Nothing he asked was too much. Never anything we gave enough. He was our lord, and we would have followed him into hell if he had but asked. But he betrayed us. How could he? The last battle of the war. The last outpost of resistance on a conquered world. We wondered why he did not just loose nuclear weapons at it and flatten it. Mount Ararat, where the very last separatists on Terra huddled awaiting the end of all things. One last obstacle to the beginning of a bright new era. The Emperor's rule, a unified Terra, a unified home for humanity. We did not fight for this, it is true. We fought because we loved it. We fought because we were raised on conflict and slaughter. We fought because he made us anew, made us unstoppable, unbeatable. But most of all, we fought for him, for the Emperor. It was to be the last object lesson, you see. We were not distributed much ammunition. We were told we would not need it. The entirety of the remaining Thunder Warriors would scale the mountain and plant the flag of the Emperor upon its summit and usher in the new Golden Age. It was going to be a bloody assault, but the result was foregone. They would not stand a chance against us, his Thunder Warriors. And so it was. It was easy. Bloody, but easy. Proudly we stood arrayed for a parade on the Mount of Ararat, waiting our reward, waiting our acclaim,
The war was over. The deed was done.
When the custodians, the Emperor's personal guard, arrived and took up positions at the edge of the plateau, we assumed it was to add to the event, the pomp. After all, it was a day of circumstance. Then the nightmare began. The custodians levelled their weapons and walked towards us, opening up. Their fire seared into our ranks and cut us down in our droves. In confusion and pain, we ran one way or another, trying to escape, but there was none. I even thought I saw him there. I will never be certain, but I think I saw Thunder Warriors fly into the air so high that only he could have been doing it. A few of us broke the spell of confusion and our instincts kicked in. We charged the lines of custodies, and with great losses we broke through. Pitifully few of us, but I was one. We ran. We ran and ran, and have never stopped running. Unlike most of my brothers, I am more stable. I have lasted by hook or by crook, a gene splice here, a concoction there, but each day has been a battle. It became a battle I no longer wished to win. So I let them find me. I let you find me. One last battle, one last day of fire and swords and skill and honor. I have bested over a score of the things created to replace me. I can die at peace with honor. I am going. You think you love him, would do anything for him, for duty. You think he loves you, that he honors his warriors. He does not. You are as I was, just his latest tool. He will discard you when your usefulness has elapsed. He will kill you all, like he killed us. His honored, his loyal Thunder Warriors. How could he? With that, the huge man's eyes glazed for the last time, a single tear drawing a pitiful trail down his already greying cheek. For generations unnumbered, my family have been counted amongst the wise, had given counsel and performed the rites of our community. It was always our honor, but now it has become our curse. For tonight, I perform the most hated task I have ever been asked to perform. Usually a joy, a ceremony, a rite of acceptance, but not tonight. I walk, to be more precise, I trudge, with one of the most precious cargoes in my charge, snuggled into the crook of my arm. I trudge. It is a long journey tonight, a pathway that seems to be never-ending, but in truth I do not wish to get to its conclusion. I do not want it to stop, for there can be but one result tonight. I know it. They knew it. The entire hamlet knew it. We dreaded this day, all of us. For Smumara and Saja were such wonderful people, so brilliant, so bright, so cheery, so beautiful. Not just of form, but of substance as well. None could argue that Smumara had been the belle of every barn dance and every gathering. She had been like a ray of sunshine given form, her hair a dazzling gold, her limbs clean and possessing a grace none could explain. She was like a summer's day, a dazzling dawn. Saja, he had always been everyone's son, always the centre of attention, for he knew no fear, yet understood it in others. He did not chide or deride it in others either, or aggrandize himself through his lack of it. Not Saja. He would guide, he would coo, he would smile, and he would make light of the darkness, would laugh at the danger, and by doing so become a beacon, a flame which consumed the fear in others. It was the light in his own way. When they began to court and fell in love, it was the joy of the village. Like a poem or play brought to life, they would cheer all who saw them in their clear doting on each other. Their wedding day was the most happy in living memory. Many of the boys and even men had secretly hoped in their heart of hearts that Smumara would choose them, would see their worth, would fall in love with them. Yet for some reason none begrudged Saja of his win, his victory, his taking her hand and taking her heart. For she beamed so. In everything she did, everywhere she went, everyone she spoke to, Smumara was happy. And with it our entire gathering. We all seemed to reflect that light. We were all happier. But then it happened. The pregnancy was hard on Smumara. Her back ached and her ankles swelled. She had pangs and was regularly violently sick. But we all gathered around and helped. That was not what went wrong. For all knew she carried a boy child. Pain and pangs meant power and favour to the child. It was a sign from the Emperor. Saja's own mother had suffered as much, but she had passed in the birthing. All now feared it for Smumara. The day came and went, and we all breathed a deep sigh of relief when Smumara was declared well. Tired, but well. She had given birth to a boy child, as we all had known would happen. But she had survived. And the feast the following day was one of deep elation, warmth and community. For Saja was of such cheer it was infectious. With that, and the relief that Smumara was well, the birthing celebration became raucous. But signs started. It was only a week ago now, but it has been such a long week. I have not slept since that first day. The day that a storm approached from the west, dark and terrible and threatening, yet it dissipated not a few miles from our village. It simply blew itself out. And deep down, I knew. We all did as we watched it happen. Nor did the child cry. Not once. Its wide, beautiful, glistening eyes showed a gleaming and brilliant soul within, often smiling despite his age. His eyes should not be opening yet, not as wide as they are, not as hungry to take in the world. More signs. When outside the wind would pick up, but never in gusts, always playfully, fluttering banners, skirts and old men's comb-overs. The world just came into life when he viewed it, and we knew. And the remaining nights I have not been able to sleep. I know what will happen. I know what I will have to do. I know this will break my heart. The hearts of Saja and Smumara. The hearts of all in the village. Our little community. Once it would have been the greatest joy and honour to witness these signs. Would have been a miracle to celebrate. For a child of the crowds to be born amongst us. But that was before Akanin's Stormstrider. He changed everything. Supposedly a powerful foretelling had been woven about his coming. It was meant to be the fulfillment of a promise, the beginning of a golden age. But instead, he brought horror and tyranny to our world. Destroyed much of our culture, much of our world. His ravening followers pulled down monuments and glories to any but he. All who resisted were massacred. Alone, he was said to be the match of 100 men. He twisted the promise of life-giving rain to the destruction of the storm, whirling around our globe like a typhoon of annihilation, never ending. He would not die. Even when hundreds of years passed, he would not die. Many valiant souls rose against him, but were brutally put down again and again. Finally, when the Star Warriors, the Angels of Death, arrived, they stood with us against the tyrant. They were victorious, but in that final battle, where the Stormstrider was finally bested, even with the help of the men of the Imperium, even then, it is said that half of the men of our world were slain fighting for or against him. We have never truly recovered. When travelling, I have many times passed the remains of old villages denuded of life even still, graveyards marking those years of pain and loss. The days of hate were over, but they could never be forgotten, and they could never be permitted to come again. And the Imperium had shown us how our society could alter, could adapt. And in that time the role of my line changed. Once the greatest glory of one of the wise was to find a child of the clouds, to teach it, to guide it and protect it. But no more. My musings, my mental defense, my avoidance of the pathway of what must happen right now are over. My feet have taken me to the place of reckoning. A land of plains, here is the lake. And our world that is mostly flat and featureless, here is the highest point. I find myself standing on an outcrop of rock, some 100 feet up, looking down at the one life-giving and taking place we all know. For it is the lake that feeds the fields around us, bringing crops to our tables. But inside it are dangerous things, swift things, hungry things. None can go into the water and live. None. I take the child from my one arm, nestled in the crook as he is. The shawl he is wrapped in jingles from the heavy metal trinkets at its edge. So many trinkets given by all. For luck, they say to themselves, but it is not really. I can imagine his wide eyes looking up at me in curiosity and wonder, for he has not even cried now. Not even when separated from his mother and father and walked away by a stranger. I try not to look at the boy child as I begin the ritual. Impossible as that may seem, as cowardly as that may sound, but it is the truth. I hate this day. And so I lift him up and unwrap him. I then throw the shawl over my shoulder and lift him up naked in both of my outstretched hands. He is light. Too light. It begins. The tears. I can now barely focus as I take one of my hands away from supporting him. I cannot help but be racked with a sob as I then slowly remove the other hand. And he does not fall. I so wanted him to be heavy in my hands, to be unable to take my hands from him. But I can, and he does not fall. He sits there as if held by a spectral cradle, the winds holding him aloft, whipping around his head and body, but gently. He smiles at me as I look at him. His eyes are shining. I should not have done that. It breaks something inside me. I should not have looked in his eyes. It is then, my hands shaking so, that I take up the ceremonial shawl, and I throw it over him. There's a deep intake of breath from him, but still no tears, as he is covered by the shawl. And then the trinkets at its edges come into play. They drag him down, slowly and steadily. He is so strong that I will bless every soul who gave a trinket to Smumara and Sarja, for it is a mercy. He is dragged down and down and down by them, until he is finally pushed under the water, and it ends. I take the staff I had feared I would have to use to stun him, and I use it more than I ever have. as I lean on it like a man broken. For I now have to return to the village, have to inform Smumar and Sarja, have to then watch as they either die inside, or worse, they try again and again for a child not of the clouds, as if anything other could come from their joining. But no matter the pain, no matter how it may blight our village, our community, no matter that it may rob us of the sunshine that was their love, their example, we can never, ever forget the past. Never, ever forget the cost of even one child of the clouds from reaching their power. For we can never, ever have another Stormstrider again. We can never again be ruled by such. As the Imperium all too rightly states in its first book of Indoctrination, to be unclean, that is the mark of the mutant. To be impure, that is the mark of the mutant. To be abhorred, that is the mark of the mutant. To be reviled, that is the mark of the mutant. To be hunted, that is the mark of the mutant. To be purged, that is the fate of the mutant. To be cleansed, for that is the fate of all mutants. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed the story so far, and will join us on the weekly entries as a result, and will like and subscribe. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.